Okay, so excited to be here with you guys. Baruch Hashem, we have a brand new class in Likutey Halachot. And let's get right to it. Ze bechina tavilat kelim. This is the concept of dipping the dishes in the mikveh. Ki hakeli sheyatza mirashut hakum tzarichim betovlan b'mikveh shaya ra'ui sheyochal bo Yisrael. So it says in the Shulchan Aruch, in your Deya, Siman Kuf Chaf, Siyaf Aleph, that a person, when he gets dishes, he gets forks, knives, eating utensils, anything in which he eats with, and he buys it from non-Jews, before he can eat from it, he needs to first dip it into the mikveh and only then eat from it. So this is what the Shulchan Aruch says. So this is the reason why you see that Jewish people, they dip the dishes that they have, the forks they have, the knives they have, all in the mikveh. Ki ha'akum shehem bechinat hateva v'zeh ikar tuma. Because the non-Jewish world, like we've said before, their whole life force is teva, is nature. Zeh ikar tuma. But the issue with teva, the issue with nature, the natural laws of the world, is that even though it's the chiyut of the non-Jewish world, it's the life force of the non-Jewish world, for the Jewish world, it's not chiyut for us. It's not life force for us. That we should know that every single thing that takes place in our life is bidiuk, and it can't change. This is a Jew's worst nightmare. I give this mashal all the time. But for a Jewish person, if he works at a job and he knows he can never make more than he does, so then as a result of that, he feels like he's stifled. He feels like he lacks freedom. But sometimes you see other people who work in the same store and they're very happy to make the same thing every single day, their whole life, knowing that their check's not going to change, their lifestyle's not going to change, nothing's going to change. And they're good with that. And the reason is because the non-Jewish life force, according to Kabbalah, is coming from Teva itself. It's coming from nature itself. But for a Jew, whether they know it or not, their chiyut, their life force, is not coming from nature. It's not coming from the laws of science. It's not coming from the physical world. Our life force is coming from emunah, the belief that every single thing that happens is not by way of teva, but that nature is only an intermediary. It's subsidiary. It's secondary. It's not primary. It's an after effect. Where does everything that takes place start? It starts with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. It starts with Hashem. And even though it filters itself, it encloses itself to the natural world, the truth is, like the Zohar says, Sibata Sibot, that Hashem is the cause of all causes. Ilata Ilot. He's higher than all things that are high. Meaning to say that even when things trickle down to the physical world, still, they're all sourced in the Ratzon of Hashem, no matter how it looks down here. So when a Jew believes that whatever is taking place is coming from Hashem and not from Teva, not from nature, he's filled with life force. But at any moment that the Jew thinks that whatever is happening because it has to, because of coincidence, because of laws of nature, because of circumstance, because of happenstance, he automatically loses his life force and he starts to feel sadness and anxiety and fears. And when this vessel which you took from them, it's not able to come into the domain of the Jewish people, ela kedusha, to kedusha, meaning to godliness, until that you dip that dish into the mikveh, which is the concept of hashgacha pratit. We know that Rabbi Nachman has an amazing Torah on the mikveh. And he says that when you're dipping in the water, you're dipping in das. You're dipping in God consciousness. And the reason why it's 40 mea, the measurement of the water has to be 40 mea or more. It cannot be less than 40 mea. And the reason is because 40 is the gematria of the letter mem. And we know that mem is the first letter of Moshe. It's the first letter of Mikveh. It's the beginning of Matan Torah. Mem is Chokhmah, it's wisdom. And the wisdom of the Torah is Hashgacha Prati, to know that every single thing takes place from Hashem. So when a person dips in a mikveh, he's dipping in God consciousness. He's taking his preconceived notions about nature, about his life, about coincidence. He's dipping in a mikveh and he's reminding himself that everything is truly from Hashem. And so too, when you take these kelim, when you take these vessels, which you buy from non-Jews, which is fine, but then you have to first dip it in a mikveh. Why? Because the keli of non-Jews is the concept of teva, it's the concept of nature. And before you can eat from that safely, before you can eat from that in a way which gives you life force and joy, you first need to dip teva, nature, into hashgacha, into providence, which is the mikveh, bechina da'at, which is the concept of das. Bechina kima la'o ha'aretz de'ah kamayim. Like Yeshaya says, what's the whole difference going to be between the days of Mashiach and now the exile? There's only one difference, da'at. And what is da'at? Da'at is knowing that everything comes from Hashem. Very simply, that's what it is. The whole difference between Yamot Mashiach, the days of the Geula, the days when there's going to be peace, when there's going to be brotherhood, when there's going to be unity, when there's going to be love, when there's going to be joy, when we're going to judge everybody favorably, when we're going to be one. And now, when there's machloket, there's questions on everybody, everybody's judging everybody unfavorably. We don't love everyone. There's hatred, there's jealousy, there's anger. What's the difference? One thing, da'at. This is the whole reason that the Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov that when your teachings go forth throughout the world, I'm going to come. Because what is the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov? What is Chassidut at its root? It's da'as. It's God consciousness. Everything that he's teaching you is to bring you to this one singular understanding, which is the truth of truths. Ein Om Novado. There's nothing else besides Hashem. And this is what Moshe Rabbeinu brings to us. This is what the mikveh brings to us. This is what the Tzaddik Yesod Olam brings to us. So before you can eat from something in a way which is supposed to give you life force, you have to make sure that what you're eating is not based in teva. It's not based in nature. Because even though for another person, that might get him excited, for a Jew, it removes and sucks out all the life force. You need to first dip your vessels, which you're going to eat from, into hashgacha pratis, to know that it's divine providence. There's nothing else besides him. Because the food of a Jew needs to be very, very holy. In Chassidut, they make a big deal about food. We know obviously in Halachot it has to be kosher. And we know depending on the person, there's different levels of kashrut that you can obtain. There's higher levels and there's lower levels. But in Chassidut, eating is a big, big deal. And by the Hasidim, the level of hashgacha, the level of kedusha, the level of holiness, the level of purity of that food, they explain makes a big difference in how you experience Hashem in your life and how you experience others in your life, how you experience your inner world. There was once a shliach of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe sent him to a faraway land, like a third world country somewhere. Maybe it was like a vacation destination, I forget which, but it was a place in which like nobody wants to live. Maybe you want a vacation there, but you don't want to live there. So he's by himself with his family, and he's trying to get these tourists who happen to be Jews or secular Jews, that when they come over for vacation, they come over for the weekend. So he invites them over for Shabbat, and he teaches them Torah. And he did this every week. He was teaching them. He was bringing people in, teaching them. But after a long time, he was getting very frustrated because literally nobody was affected. Nobody. So I don't know if you can imagine. You have all this trust in your tzaddik, in your Rebbe. He tells you to go to a faraway land, live your life there because you have a higher purpose. You're going to help every Jew who comes through there get closer to Hashem. Okay, great. But what happens when you're there for years and it doesn't happen? Literally nobody is affected. So obviously, if you're a human being, you're normal, you're vulnerable, you would admit that it's very painful. It's confusing. So what did he do? He went back to Lubavitcher Rebbe after many years, and he had a private audience with the Rebbe, and he said to him, Rebbe, I don't understand. You sent me there. You told me I'm going to help a lot of people over there get closer to Hashem. Literally nobody has been affected. So Lubavitcher Rebbe responded back to him, are you teaching them Torah? And he said, yes, of course. What else would I be doing? He said, that's the problem. Just give them kosher food. He goes, huh? He said, yeah. Because as long as a Jew is not eating kosher food, he doesn't have the sensitivity to spirituality. It gives him a tumah in the heart. It gives him a blemish, a clogging in the heart, in which he's not able to experience something which is higher, which is elevated, like Torah. He said the mistake that you're making is every time that they bring them over, you're giving them divrei Torah. Stop giving them divrei Torah. Just have them come over, show them how you love them no matter what, and give them kosher food. Okay, he goes back, and sure enough, he starts giving everybody kosher food, and all of a sudden, the Chabad house over there is rocking. People are coming every weekend, and then after they start eating the kosher food, they ask the rabbi certain questions. What does the Torah mean about this? What does the Torah say about this? And then he realized how deep of an inyan it is. Kosher food. My bar mitzvah parsha, Shmini, the 8th day. So something very elevated, very high. Starts with the inauguration of the Mishkan. This is the revelation of Das in the world. But it ends with all of these particular laws about kashrut, what you can eat, what you can't eat, what type of food you can eat, what type of animals you can eat, what you can't eat. And it's so meticulous about it. And it's like the opposite effect, you come in with a bam, you come in with a bang, and all of a sudden you end with these particular details. And I always wondered to myself, what's the connection? And the depth is that for you to experience Shemini, for you to be able to experience God consciousness, you need to eat kosher food. And even if the food itself is kosher, it needs to be eaten with kosher kelim, kosher vessels. It's a very deep inyan. The ikar kedusha ta'achila, and the essence of the godliness of eating, hu ayadei da'at. It's all based on the da'at, on the God consciousness of the person who's eating it. Shuhit galut hashkacha. And through this, he's able to reveal the hashkacha of the one who brought him the food. Very simply, if a person understands that all the food that he's getting, he got from Hashem, right? A person might think to himself, I got it from the store. Yeah, but where did they get it from? They got it over from the farm. And who made the crops grow? Came from the rain. Okay, where did the rain come from? So the Gemara says rain is one of the 3 things that only Hashem brings. So it comes from Hashem. That's on a very simple level. But on a deeper level, if you look at food on a microscopic level, if you look at anything on a microscopic level, you see that it's living molecules, it's moving molecules. And from a perspective of quantum physics, everything in the physical world is popping into and out of existence at every moment. This is according to science. So in truth, the food's there, but what is it? According to Chassidut, it's mamish godliness. There's godliness in there. It's elokut. It's da'at itself. And this is the whole inyan of eating matzah on Pesach, which is coming up soon. Because the whole reason we ate the whole reason we ate matzah is because the matzah itself is the revelation of Pesach. We know Pesach, says the Arizal, is the mouth that speaks. What's the benefit of talking to Hashem? You start to develop da'as. You start to realize everything comes from him. And that in living form is matzah itself. Ayedea achila daika. And it's through eating specifically that we're able to experience the hashgacha of Hashem, the providence of Hashem. Ayedesha ochli matzah. It's through the eating of matzah. And that's the whole reason we're not allowed to eat bread on Pesach. For 7 straight days, we have to eat matzah. What's the whole difference? What's the whole reason? Because chametz is with a chet. The only difference between chametz and matzah is a little chick, right? Chametz is a chet. Matzah is with a hay. So the only real difference, says the Zohar, is this little tiny bit. And what's that little tiny bit represent? Gava, ego. What's the whole essence of matzah? Bitul, self-nullification. I eat matzah, and I'm not coming from a place of I run my life, I run the world. It's run by people, places, and things. But instead, I'm open to the possibility that there's something greater going on. That things are not just happening stam. I didn't get cut off today because this guy happens to be a ... Because Hashem wanted to challenge me and to elevate my ability to overcome my anger. I come home and all of a sudden my spouse is telling me, do this, do that, do this, do that. And a person thinks to themselves, oh, my wife, my husband, what happened? And you don't realize that Hashem wants to test your patience. And everything is like that. Yes, it's true, everyone has free will. Yes, it's true, everybody chooses. But at the same time, and this is something which we cannot fathom yet, it is apparently a paradox which comes from a very, very deep secret from the beginning of creation, that while it's true that everybody's choosing, nothing can happen unless Hashem wants it to. So Lamais, at the end of the day, it's about what you pay attention to. Do you pay attention to the chametz? I do it, people do it, places do it, things do it. Or do I want to allow myself to nullify my ego and to open myself to the possibility that there's matzah, that it's the same exact thing, except I'm taking my ego out of it. And now it's not rising, right? But at the same time, it's revealing to me a deep, deep level of consciousness called da'at, hashgacha pratit. So now he's saying a huge thing. What is matzah? It's the tikkun for Adam Rishon. What was the first error made in history? When Adam Rishon and Chava, they ate from the Eitz Da'at. So most people usually think about the fact that they did what they're not supposed to do. But Rav Natan is keying us into a very specific detail. They ate from the Eitz Da'at. So this is a blemish of Da'at. When they ate from this tree, like Rav Natan says elsewhere, the tree represents Teva, nature. They ate from this tree and they blemished their Da'at. That's why it's called Da'at Tovara, the tree of knowledge of good and its opposite. Meaning that within this tree, you have experiences that has both Hashgacha Pratit, the revelation of Hashem, and at the same time, it's covered over by nature. And when Adam ate from this tree, as a result of this for the rest of history, we are challenged with this paradigm. Everything looks like Teva, but if you look deep enough, you see that there's Tov in there. There's Hashem. And by the time that Shabbat takes place, that Yemot Mashiach takes place, the days of Mashiach, then we're going to get to eat from the Eitz Chaim and to see that, in fact, the whole time, it was nothing else besides Hashem. But now, how do we matakin? How do we rectify our eating? By that, even though once we see the food, when we see our life, we experience it as coming from people, place, and things, to take a second and to try to think about, meditate on the fact, to say out loud, this food is from Hashem. This fight is from Hashem. This lacking in me is from Hashem. This experience is from Hashem. It's all from Hashem. And even though it looks like nature, like the Zohar says, every fruit is preceded by a peel. This was the peel that was brought into existence from the Eitz Da'at Tovara. Now every fruit is covered over by a peel. And it's our job, like it says in the first Torah of Likutey, to see the chokhmah and everything, to see the fact that inside of that food is living godliness. And the whole concept of eating from the Eitz Da'at Tovara was that man internalized secular wisdom. And we've spoken about this many times before. Rabbi Nachman holds that this is the greatest barrier to Emunah. And Rav Natan goes crazy about this in the beginning of Likutey Halachot. Everything we've been doing for weeks, for months, has been about this concept in different forms and fashions, about how secular wisdom is the greatest barrier to Emunah. It's the greatest barrier to Da'at, to realizing, experiencing that everything comes from Hashem. Another story, Lubavitch Rebbe. There was a person that he was like the best bacher in his yeshiva. He was learning day and night. He was advancing in all levels of learning, and they never saw him leave the yeshiva. Every single day, he was on fire. And then one day, his friends just didn't see him anymore. And a day goes by, and they don't see him. And another day goes by, they don't see him. And they're like, where is he? This guy was a rock star. He was inspiring us. So they went to go visit him in his house. And he looked down, and he looked drab. And they said to him, what's going on? They said, you were like on fire. Why haven't you been in yeshiva? He said, I'll tell you the truth. I was feeling so good. I was feeling so high. I was feeling so connected to Hashem. I was learning. I was davening. I was feeling one with him. I saw him in everything. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, but the next day I woke up and I just started having sveikot. I just started having doubts. Is Hashem really real? Is he really running my life? Does he really care about me? Is he really part of the things that are taking place? Am I wasting my time? Is this even real? And I just lost all my thunder. And I felt bad even coming into the shul. And they said to him, well, what happened in between? He goes, I really have no idea. So they said, why don't you send a letter to Lubavitcher Rebbe, because he was a Chabad Chassid, and ask him what he thinks you should do. This is the whole benefit of having the Rebbe. So he says, okay, fine. Sends him a letter, and a letter comes back from 770. The Lubavitcher Rebbe says back to him, and this has nothing to do with what was sent to him. All he told him was exactly what I just told you. His response back to him was, stop reading the newspaper at night before you go to sleep, and everything's going to go back to normal. You're going to be just fine. And he started to get chills. And he looked at his friends. He goes, oh my gosh, that's what it is. Out of nowhere, the past few nights, I had this urge to read the newspaper before I went to sleep. It was like basic current events. I didn't think anything of it, just to relax a little bit, to chill right before I went to sleep. And that was what happened. The next day I woke up and I lost all of my fire. I started having all of these doubts. So one is obviously, how does Lubavitcher Rebbe know? Considering he didn't know. So this is the greatness of tzaddikim, that they have Ruach HaKodesh. They really, really do know things. The other side, and the one that we're trying to get out of this lesson, is that the Lubavitcher Rebbe is pointing out that the whole difference between this kid being on fire, feeling so close to Hashem, feeling one with him, feeling like he's growing, feeling like he's getting closer, feeling like he's connected, he's achieving the purpose of his life. And then the next day, he feels lost, he feels confused, he feels sad, he feels scared. One thing, he read the newspaper that night. That's it. Now on paper, this sounds crazy, no pun intended. But if you know Rabbi Nachman's Torah, he says, it is mamish asur. It is not allowed for a Jew to learn secular wisdom. Why? And the reason is very simple. Because it's the antithesis of the life force of a Jew. The life force of a Jew is amunah. The life force of a Jew is da'at, is God consciousness. And all of secular wisdom is permeated by one idea: people, places, and things. And as soon as a Jew touches it, just like if he touches non-kosher food, he starts to become very desensitized to spirituality. I never really would believe this. If I didn't try it myself for a week a few years ago, that I said for 1 week, I'm not going to look at it, even though I thought it was crazy. And that week changed my whole life. And obviously, I've grown and I fell in it over the course of time. But Baruch Hashem, I've been strong for a while now. And it really is the whole difference between feeling like you have an elevated state of consciousness, feeling like you're above nature, and feeling like you're literally trapped by everything that takes place and you have tremendous questions. This is the da'at of the Sitra Achra, because this is the consciousness of the other side. Pagama da'at de Gedusha. It's the blemish of the God consciousness. The ikar pagam haya ayadei chila. And the essence of the blemish, it came from eating daika specifically. Ki ikar tikun achila hu ayadei amuna daika. And therefore, since the whole blemish in eating in the beginning was that they didn't have amuna, Hashem told them, eat from every tree besides this, meaning you can experience every form of Torah, every revelation of godliness. Just don't eat from the tree of secular wisdom. And he ate from it. What is secular wisdom? The opposite of? It's the opposite of da'at. It's the opposite of the fact that Hashem runs the world. It's that nature is in control. So just like it became blemished through eating, so too Rav Natan's teaching, the tikkun, the rectification, is to eat be'emunah. To eat with emunah specifically. Like it says, urei emunah. And to shepherd emunah. Kamuva b'makom acher, like it says in the Likutey. But there when it says to shepherd emunah, it says it comes badafka from eating with emunah. Because when a person does not eat with kedusha, through this he blemishes his da'at. What does it mean to eat with kedusha? So on one level it means that the food is kosher. Another level is, how are you eating? Are you eating just because it tastes good? Are you eating because it's going to give you energy in order to serve Hashem? Or are you eating at an even higher level because the food itself is another potential to reveal godliness? If you're eating just because it tastes good, so this is a pagam of eating. This is not achila b'kedusha. This is achila of the sitra achra. And I know it's very strong terms, but you'll mamish see it. If you want to really connect to this idea, the next time you eat, see if you eat very fast and you eat more than you need, watch how all your life force leaves you. You're going to lose your energy. You're going to lose your motivation. You're going to lose your sensitivity to spirituality. You're not going to want to learn after that. You're not going to want to pray after that. And even though a person's going to say it's because you're physically full, but that's only the manifestation of a very deep spiritual inyan. That is, that when a person eats without Kedusha, it's like a replay of Adam Rishon in the garden. And what happened as soon as he ate from that tree? All of a sudden he became self-conscious. Before that, he had no self-consciousness. It was only God consciousness. So therefore, the tikkun comes specifically with eating. Because by eating not with Kedusha, you blemish da'at, you blemish God consciousness, which is the concept of providence. And as soon as you do so, you fall into the belief of people, places, and things. Pen tocher v'hasava v'ram levavcha v'shacha et Hashem Elokecha v'amarta b'vavcha kochi v'otzem yadi asali. And now Rav Natan is bringing from Rabbi Nachman a pasuk which literally explicitly shows this dynamic. That the pasuk says at the end of the Torah in Devarim, lest you eat and you become satiated, v'ram levavcha, and your heart becomes filled with ego. And you forget Hashem your God. And you say in your heart, whether you know it or it's subconscious, it's through my power, it's through my strength that things are taking place. Mamish, it's a pasuk. It's not Hasidus, it's not the Gemara, it's literally in the Torah. What happens when you eat and you become oversatiated, or you eat not with Kedusha? You automatically forget about Hashem and you start to think everything comes from you. And you fall into nature. As if that parnasa, as if that livelihood comes from your hand. We know the Gemara says that giving parnasa to a person is like the splitting of the sea. So on the one side, it's talking about the difficulty of it, so to speak. Now, obviously, there's a question, how is it difficult? Nothing's difficult for Hashem. Rabbi Nachman deals with this. But the point that we want to come out with this is the fact that how did the ocean split? Because of tefillah. Where does parnasa come from? Rabbi Nachman says, from tefillah. Livelihood, money comes from tefillah. What's the reason for that? Because everything is reciprocal. Rabbi Nachman explains that when a person receives livelihood, he receives parnasa, he automatically feels this tremendous simcha, this tremendous joy, right? It's livelihood. He's going to be able to live with this. He's going to be able to grow with this. He's going to be able to expand with this. Good. So Rabbi Nachman said, does Hashem a parnasa, right? Does he have any check that comes his way on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis that makes him simcha like that? And he says, yes. You know how you mafarnes Hashem? You know how you sustain Hashem? With your mouth. Every single time that you pray to Hashem, you speak to Hashem, you're literally giving him his parnasa. And that's why you have a reciprocal effect, that the parnasa then comes down because you brought it up. Everything that comes from below and up comes from up to below. And by Rabbi Nachman, it's very clear that parnasa, and he talks a lot about this. It's a huge mistake that people make, that through thinking that if I work harder, I'm going to make more money. And if I work less hard, or if I work in a job which is not as all-consuming, I can't make money. Or if it's not a steady paycheck, it's a paycheck which is determined by me. It's all about how much I work. Therefore, if I work 24 hours, I have the most chance to make the most money. There's multi-billionaires that they work 3 hours a day. And there's people who work day and night, 12-hour shifts, and they can barely support their family. What's the reason? Because parnasa comes from Hashem. When does a person fall into the trap of believing it comes from them? When they don't eat with Kedusha. or when they don't eat kosher, and they're not able to acknowledge or to recognize that Hashem runs their life. This is a concept of with my strength and with the power of my own hand. This is the blemish of the hands. Pagam chaf chet paktin diyadayim. So this is a beautiful thing that Rabbi Nachman explains. Why does Rabbi Nachman say that when a person claps his hands, he breaks judgments? We know that Rabbi Nachman says that when you do Ibodah, you should clap your hands. That when you pray, you should clap your hands. Clapping your hands breaks judgments. It draws divine providence into the world. What's the reason? Because according to Kabbalah, they explain that how many sections of the fingers are there? You have 2 on the thumb, and then you have 3 on each of the fingers. So let's add it up. We have 3 times 4 is 12, plus 2 is 14. 14 times 2, the second hand, 28. What's the significance of 28 sections of the hands? There's 28 letters in the first pasuk of the Torah. In the beginning, Hashem created all the spiritual worlds and the physical world. So why should that break decrees? Because all judgment came after that. When Hashem originally created the world, it was only good. And at that state of existence, everything was coming into being. So Rabbi Nachman explains that at that point, Hashem can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. And it's not even a changing of nature, so to speak, for him, because nature hasn't even been implemented yet. So when a person claps his hands, he literally draws down the koach, the 28 prakim, and of his hands, the 28 letters of the first pasuk of the Torah. It illuminates that first pasuk, and it draws down the providence from the beginning of creation. So he's saying, but when a person eats not with kedusha, which he does with his hands, then he blemishes the 28 prakim of his hands. And then all of a sudden, he doesn't experience Bereshit Bar Elokim at the Shemayim Vet Haaretz. He doesn't experience that Hashem is machadesh. He's renewing and recreating and changing reality at every moment. He sees everything as stagnant. Because he has blemished the first pasuk in the Torah. And that is the source of all providence in the world, of all da'at. This is the whole reason why Rabbi Nachman says the Torah starts with Bereshit Bar Elokim at the Shemayim Vet Haaretz. Why is the Torah starting with the fact that Hashem created everything? Because this is the ikar of Emunah. This is the essence of belief in Hashem. It's not just the fact that he exists. It's not just the fact that he oversees everything. It's that he created the world, yesh ma'ayin, somethingness from nothingness. And even after the world is created, even though it looks like it's just somethingness until whatever, the real truth is, and they've even proven it now, that at every single moment, something is coming from nothing. And even though it always looks the same, that's because we're not eating with Kedusha. And this is the concept of that you should remember Hashem your God, ki hu noten lecha koach. Like it says there, because Hashem gave to you koach. Why is he saying koach, he gave you strength? Because Gematria 28, meaning he gave you the ability to eat with Kedusha, and through that to draw down the 28 first letters of the Torah, the first pasuk of the Torah, draw down Hashgacha Pratit. Hayinu, ki be'emet hakol ba'hashgacha Hashem yiparach, shebara hakol bekoach atzvan shamase bereshit. Because in truth, everything through Hashgacha Pratit, through divine providence, Hashem created everything in the world through these 28 letters of Maseh Bereshit. V'hu mashkiach b'cho et v'noten koach. And he is overseeing everything all the time and giving it koach, meaning he's drawing from that first pasuk of the Torah life force into every element of reality. And if he didn't for one given moment, that thing would cease to exist. So every moment you breathe, this is why the Gemara says that in truth, you should say thank you. That's a crazy thing. Can you imagine saying thank you, thank you, thank you? Do you even notice you're breathing today? Why? Because every single moment Hashem is bringing you koach from the first pasuk of the Torah. That's your life force. And if it wasn't there, you would have no life force. It's from koach daika, from koach specifically. Ki Hashem yiparach mashgiach umkayem ha'olam. Because Hashem yiparach, he is the mashgiach, he's the overseer, the orchestrator, umkayem ha'olam. He's the one who sustains reality. Ayadei chav chet advan shamas bereshit. All through the 28 letters of Maseh Bereshit. Bezrat Hashem, we're going to continue and finish this lesson the next time we do Likutey Halachot. Does anybody have any questions from today's lesson? Any questions? Did anybody hear the lesson? No. Very good. No question. Okay, good. Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you. You guys got to ask questions. This sweetened my day. I asked Hashem to help me understand the depth. Wow, Baruch Hashem, amazing. Heard it, was great. Okay, wonderful. Hashem should give us a lot of strength for this, because I'll tell you, it's very, very hard. This is mamash, my greatest challenge. Eating with Kedusha. It's very, very, very difficult. You have to pray a lot on this every single day. Okay, there's a question on the bottom. A Hippolytu guide that was on your chat. What does this mean? I can't connect to it when I read it. Meaning we know nothing. My wisdom and my knowledge are the source of my troubles. My greatest challenge too. Okay. It's taught in Kabbalah that you have 10 sfirot. There's 10 levels of consciousness. The lowest level is called Emunah. Emunah Pashuta, simple faith, just to believe in Hashem. Then above that, you have higher and higher levels of consciousness until you get all the way up to Da'at, Bina, and Chokhmah. And this level of consciousness is very high, and it's the complete felt experience that everything that's taking place is coming from Hashem. This was the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. But there's a level higher than this. It's called Keter. Keter is the highest. And at the level of Keter, it's called the unknowable head. Why is it called the unknowable head? Because when a person gets to that level, he knows he doesn't know anything. When Moshe Rabbeinu was buried, Rabbi Nachman says, why does he not know where he's buried? Why does it say that? Why do you need to tell us that? Because he reached the pinnacle of his life. His whole life, he achieved the highest level of knowledge, the level of Chokhmah Bina Da'at. But when he passed away, he achieved the level of Keter, that even Moshe doesn't know where he's buried, because he doesn't know at that point. Rabbi Nachman, towards the end of his life, when they came to him to hear Divrei Torah, they were all gathered around the table, and literally they were soaking up every word he said. You can imagine what it was like to be by his table. And he said to them, I don't know why you guys come to me. I don't know anything. And they're like, what do you mean you don't know anything? If you don't know anything, we really don't know anything. So the depth of it is he reached the level of knowing he doesn't know. There was a person who came up to Rav Natan and said, I think I understand what Rabbi Nachman says. He goes, I also don't know anything. So Rav Natan goes, no, you mamish don't know anything. Rabbi Nachman knows so much, he realized he didn't know. It's a whole different sugya. Okay? So what's the point for us? I'll give you just like a little meditation to think about. I was in the forest once, in the field, when I was living in Queens. And I was thinking very deeply. When I close my eyes when I do Hippolytu, because the whole essence of Hippolytu, the benefit of it, is that you move into a state of bitul. You lose, so to speak, the strength and the heaviness of the goof. You start to feel lighter. You start to feel more joy. You start to feel more connected, because the heaviness of the body starts to go away when you speak to Hashem for 60 straight minutes. And it helps if you have your eyes closed. Obviously, you have to feel safe. If you don't feel safe doing that, that's another thing. But I just noticed that the less that I have sensory things going on, the easier it is for me to get into that space. So I remember about like 45, 50 minutes in, I was really feeling connected. I was really feeling elevated. I felt my mind was like released from all of the weight of the day, from all the weight of the week. And then I opened my eyes and I saw this little tiny ant, or this little tiny bug, and it was crawling across this big leaf. And I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, can you imagine if this ant thought, like we think? And he's thinking to himself about his life and why everything that's taking place. And this ant has no idea that this leaf that he's on is so much bigger than he is. And he has so much to walk around. He hasn't even seen the whole leaf. And if he can look at even further, he would see that this little leaf is actually very small. This leaf is part of a plant. And this plant has many leaves that are even bigger than this leaf. But this plant is only a little tiny plant. And if you look next to this plant itself, you see gigantic plants with fruits and with big trees and with big flowers and surrounded on all sides for miles and miles and miles. And then that's only in this field. Outside of the field, you have this whole city. And that's only Queens. That's only Forest Hills. You go outside of there, you have the 5 towns. And that's only Manhattan. That's only New York City. You go outside of that, you have upstate New York. You go out, that's only New York, though. There's 50 states in the United States of America. But that's only the United States of America. That's only one continent, North America. You still have Canada, and you have Antarctica. And then you have 6 other continents. And they're all surrounded by gigantic oceans that used to take months to traverse. And that's only this earth. And this earth is very small. And around the earth, you have planets, gigantic planets and stars that look very small, but these stars are actually much bigger than the earth. They're just so far away. And all of these things are only in our galaxy. And then you have multiple galaxies. And all of this is just in the physical world, and it's only what we know. And the Zohar explains that this physical world is like the toenail of the world above it. And the world above it has a world above that, and it's like the toenail to that. And as you keep going up and up and up, and there's infinite worlds, and that's all things that were created. You haven't even got to Hashem yet. And you think about this little tiny ant, and he's thinking about his life. Oh my gosh, why do I have to walk all the time? How come I haven't met anybody yet? Why am I alone? Why is this every day it's such a big walk? Why am I struggling with this? Why can't I make my ends meet? Why are people not being nice to me? But it's only because this ant thinks that the whole world is him. But if the ant was able to see up, to achieve bitul, he could see that the world is huge. It's so much bigger than him. And the whole reason he's confused is because he doesn't see how this leaf fits into the whole ecosystem of the world, of the field. That if this leaf didn't have this ant walking on it, then the leaf wouldn't have what it needs, and then the dirt wouldn't have what it needs. And the scientists explain that if you take one species out of the ecosystem, the whole thing goes haywire. But he doesn't know that because he only sees his little tiny space. So what does it mean that in Bodhidut, that it should be healing to know that I don't know? This is the answer. Because when a person realizes that there's so many more possibilities for what's taking place than they could possibly imagine, and just like a puzzle and a puzzle piece in a puzzle, if you just see one puzzle piece and you don't see the border and you don't see the other pieces, so you're like, I'm lost. It's done. I'm over. What is this? It's confusing. Why am I alone? But the whole reason is because the piece doesn't see all the pieces around it. And then it doesn't see the whole border around that. So too with us. The beginning of knowing in truth is to know that you don't know. As soon as a person realizes that they don't know, then they can begin to experience all of the infinite possibilities that are going on in their life. But as soon as a person thinks that they know, and that's the end of knowledge, they have constricted themselves into a box. And this is one of the main causes of the suffering. So I think that's one reason. Does that make sense? Okay. Hopefully it did. Someone says, if you can elaborate on what it means that we sustain him with parnasa via prayer. Okay. So the reason is very simple. We know that Hashem has a Shekhinah. It's the female presence of God. This female dimension of Hashem is, so to speak, Hashem's wife. I know it's kiviyachol, so to speak, okay? And he wants to be with his wife all the time. So how do we connect him with his wife? What do we have to do with that? And the answer is that the Shekhinah is in a Jew's mouth. As soon as a person, a Jew, speaks to Hashem, that is the Shekhinah itself. So when you speak to Hashem, you're uniting Hashem with his Shekhinah. You're bringing him his livelihood, his sustenance, his parnasa, which is his wife. Because according to Chazal, according to the sages, and according to Kabbalah, all sustenance comes from the wife. All blessing comes from the wife. So too, as long as Hashem is separate from his wife, so to speak, he feels a lacking. And that's the whole essence of parnasa, to fill the lack. So how do we give Hashem parnasa? By speaking to him, because that speech itself is his wife. Okay, so this is something to meditate on as you're doing hipodet. Last question. Please, is there a spiritual explanation for a profound neshama homesickness? Yes. Here's something very deep. Hashem has not been home for thousands of years. He has not had a home to live in for thousands of years. He's been in exile. What's the reason that Hashem makes a person feel on a spiritual level like he doesn't have a home, or that even when he's outside of home, he's homesick? So Rabbi Nachman says a very deep thing, that when Hashem really loves a person, when he wants to, so to speak, be your good friend, and he wants you to be his good friend. So how does he convey what he feels to you? He does it through your own heart. This is a very deep thing. But what it means on a simple level is that sometimes when I feel sad or I feel homesick, it's because Hashem does. And Hashem wants us to share in his experience, just like when we go through something and we want someone to share in our experience. And the only way he can convey it to you is through the feelings that are in your own heart. And Rabbi Nachman says that this is exactly what happens in Hipotetu, that there are times a person starts to feel a tremendous welling of emotion that comes up from inside of him. It's coming from a very deep place. He doesn't even know where it's coming from. And Rabbi Nachman says there's a good chance it's actually coming from Hashem. That's Hashem's feeling itself. And he wants to include you in it. Okay? So what's the reason why a person feels homesick? Because Hashem is homesick. And now all of a sudden, when Rabbi Nachman says, it's a mitzvah, it's a tremendous mitzvah, it's a beautiful, amazing thing to do tikkun chatzot, to get up in the morning before alot hashachar, before the dawn, and to lament the fact that Hashem does not have a home. You know, we think to ourselves, oh my gosh, this building went away 2,000 years ago. What does this have to do with us now? Why does Rabbi Nachman says that when a person does chatzot, it rectifies his amun, it rectifies his faith, it increases his da'at. It literally takes Jewish souls that have been trapped by the Sitra Achra, it causes the Sitra Achra to vomit out these souls so that they can get close to Hashem. It says it's like you gave a pidyon nefesh, which according to Kabbalah is a huge thing. You give money to a tzaddik, and it literally can extricate a person's neshama from the forces of negativity. All Rabbi Nachman says through tikkun chatzot. What's the whole reason? The reason is because the whole exile is that Hashem doesn't have a home. And because Hashem doesn't have a home, we don't have a home. And that's why we feel homesick. And we may not even understand it. You know, even if you are in your home, you still might feel homesick. Why don't we ever feel full? Why don't we ever feel comfortable? Because Hashem's not home. And as long as Hashem doesn't have a home down here, we don't have a home down here. Does that happen even outside of Hipotetu when Hashem shares his feelings with us? Sometimes it is, but it can be a little problematic, because if you start to think it's always his emotions, so it's not always the case. Because a lot of times our emotions are coming from decisions that we make, negative thoughts that we meditate on, negative emotions that we internalize, destructive actions that we engage in, and the thoughts are coming from that place. Where the feelings are coming from that place. But Rabbi Nachman says that why is Hipotetu like a good sign to know? Because in Hipotetu, you can get to such a place of inner truth. If you really mamish, scream to Hashem, you throw yourself on Hashem completely, you let yourself be vulnerable, you say everything. So then once you get to that place, that's a place of truth. And then those emotions are coming from Hashem. Baruch Hashem, I've been crying in my Ibodu for months now that I want to go home, but it wells up in me just like you explained. Okay, so this is an amazing thing. I remember, I've spoken a lot about this and my history of depressive episodes, my long-standing skeleton of the closet of sadness, of atzvut, which Baruch Hashem's kept me from for years now, but for almost 30 years of my life, it was depressive episode after depressive episode. And obviously it hit the brick wall, which actually changed my whole life for the good. But I remember when I read this Torah in Likutey about this whole thing about how when Hashem really loves his son or his daughter, and he wants that they should have the answer to their prayers, that they're asking to be closer to him. So he says, okay, so I want you to feel what I feel. And you start to feel this feeling of brokenheartedness, and you don't know where it's coming from. And you realize that Hashem really just wants to be your best friend. And then all of a sudden, all of those feelings that you had, they bring on a whole new meaning for you. And you can literally say, thank you. Thank you, Hashem, that you let me into your world. This is something I want so bad, to know what you think, what you feel. We're constantly thinking about us. How does Hashem feel? Hashem wants to have a home, because if he has a home, then we have a home. And by the way, just as a last point, the whole concept of the home comes from the Mishkan. Hashem says, build a Mishkan and I'm going to dwell in them. So all the rabbis say, I don't understand, doesn't make sense. Build a Mishkan, I'll dwell in the Mishkan. So they explain, you create a home for Hashem, but then at the end of the day, Hashem dwells in a Jew's heart. That's his home. It's in our heart. So we need to make a space for him in our heart. The overwhelming emotion is okay. It can be okay. It depends where it's coming from. The way to know if you're feeling brokenhearted or if you're sad, Rabbi Nachman says, is how do you feel afterwards? If you're crying from brokenheartedness, you'll notice that afterwards you feel relief. But if you're crying from sadness or from hopelessness, then you're going to notice you feel worse after. So this is a good way to tell, Rabbi Nachman says. Okay, everybody have an amazing night, amazing day. Bezrat Hashem, have a Shabbat Shalom, B'simcha Mamish. Bezrat Hashem, I'm going to write an article. Hopefully Aaron will also write an article. Please look out for these articles. We spend a lot of time on them, many hours writing them, way into the night, and it's not easy at all. But Baruch Hashem, the amount of feedback that we're getting and the amount of people's hearts that we're touching. Even in Ramat Beit Shemesh, where I live in Eretz Yisrael, we started in one shul, and now we're in like 4 shuls, maybe even 5 shuls. That's like 200 something people. And then in New Jersey, I know that Aaron has put it in 2 shuls over there. So we're reaching a lot of people, more and more people, thank God. And then obviously we're texting it out, we're emailing it out to everybody. So tell your friends and family, if you know anybody who you feel like would connect to Rabbi Nachman's Torah, you feel like needs elevation, they need faith, they need empowerment, encouragement. So please go on our website, put your email into the thing, or text it onto the group. We'll add you on. Beautiful. Okay, amazing. So look out for that. Everybody have Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.